The Russian army has resumed its assault on the Ukrainian city of Bakhmut in a battle reminiscent of the trench warfare seen in World War I, with neither side giving up in the bloody standoff between the two sides. The General Staff of the Ukrainian Army reports another day of artillery and tank bombardments on the former city of 70,000, which is now largely deserted after a brutal campaign by invading Russian troops since the height of summer. Around the city, shelling was reported in more than 24 different settlements, while recent days have seen unsuccessful advances from Russian forces on critical infrastructure in the region. Smaller detachments of Ukrainian troops, meanwhile, have engaged the Russians in spurts of urban warfare, laying down machine gun fire from trenches and the interior of burned-out buildings. The fighting itself has been brutal, belying the salt mining towns' otherwise minor strategic importance for either side. Artillery strikes in the region had been playing out day and night, with Ukraine deploying the use of thermal cameras to snuff out the Russian advances before they have the opportunity to attack. And in the trenches scarring the surrounding landscape, a constant chatter of gunfire and artillery blasts echo across the snow-covered plains as tank-accompanied regiments advance toward the Russian positions and gains of what U.S. defense officials have described as movements of meters rather than miles. Other videos from the city depict soldiers under a constant barrage of artillery fire from the Russian side, shaking the city and turning buildings and other fortifications into gravel. For the Ukrainians, holding the city would be to deny the enemy their deepest occupied position since the start of the Russian-Ukraine war nearly a decade ago. For the Russians particularly, for the Wagner Group-affiliated mercenaries leading the fight, taking Bakhmut would provide their army with improved morale following a string of defeats in major population centers like Kherson, which Ukraine liberated from Russian control last month. And while some Russian sources have claimed victory there is imminent, others are not convinced. Yuri Sak, an advisor to Ukraine's Minister of Defense, told CNBC Wednesday that the city was undoubtedly one of the key hotspots in the ongoing war, while casting off enemy assertions that their seizure of the city was imminent against heavy casualties there. The Institute for the Study of War also cast doubts on the Russian claims in their assessment of the situation there, saying the Russian encirclement of the city was far from imminent. It is still unclear how many casualties have been incurred by either side in the battle so far. While Russia has not reported casualties from the region, Ukraine has claimed as many as 10,000 killed between an escalation of fighting in September through the final week of November. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian Ministry of Foreign Defense reported 560 additional Russian soldiers had been killed overnight nationwide in its latest reported figures Thursday morning. Russia is considering using nuclear weapons in an attack on Ukraine. This can be seen from President Vladimir Putin's request to prepare to deploy deterrence troops. I ordered the Minister of Defense and the Chief of the General Staff of the Russian Armed Forces to put the deterrence forces of the Russian Army into special combat service mode, Putin said in a televised speech late last month. Meanwhile, Russia's 1,458 nuclear warheads are deployed on intercontinental ballistic missiles on submarines, and strategic bombers. The figures are available from New START, a nuclear weapons reduction treaty between the U.S. and Russia. Included is the division of the latest nuclear warhead figures every 6 months. But it seems that the use of nuclear in the attack on Ukraine is still too far away. Because in 2020, Russia's nuclear doctrine stated that the country would only use a nuclear attack in only 1 case out of 4.
Огонь!
Your elevation's perfect, bring it to the right.
Fire! Stand by! Fire!